I think it's fair to say my relationship with carp fishing has somewhat changed over the years. We all know that time is certainly one of the biggest assets in carp fishing, and time is something I haven't got these days. Family, busy job, and I seem to be juggling everything and trying to squeeze carp fishing in at the same time. I'm sure that's relatable. I'm sure many people listening to this or watching this will know that actually, if you've got time and you can dedicate it to carp fishing, you can be pretty consistent. I don't really do any of those 2 or 3 night sessions anymore, apart from when I go to Europe for a longer trip. All my UK fishing these days is just running around, stealing an hour here and there. And if I'm lucky, I'll get to do maybe a work overnighter. And that's why I think stalking, like I've been doing today, has been such an asset in my fishing over the last 3 or 4 years. Just being able to bait lots of little areas, running round with a couple of rods and just squeezing in a little bit of stalking has been sort of a saviour, and I can get my fix quickly when the conditions are right and hopefully get a few fish feeding right at my feet. And there's no better way of catching them, is there? Catching them really close, up personal, seeing everything unfold in front of you is a really exciting way of fishing. And over the years I've found stalking has become more and more into my armoury, purely down to not having enough time to dedicate to what you would class as normal session fishing. The best bit about stalking as well is you don't have to break the bank when it comes to volumes of bait. Now I've got a small little bucket, you've probably seen me get it out the van, and in there I've got a kilo of boilies, I've got some pellets, I've got some hemp and a few little crushed tigers. And all I've done today is go around the lake and put a tiny handful in close in 4 or 5 different areas. It's all very visual. And I think one handful of bait, bearing in mind I've got 2 or 3 hours fishing max today, one handful of bait goes a long way. And the plan obviously is to walk round and try and have a look if there's any feeding activity, and then it's just a case of trying to get a rod in as quietly as I can. So it's really liberating just to travel light, carry a small amount of bait, and obviously just get around the lake into all the nooks and crannies you wouldn't usually fish if you had a bivvy and you were setting up for more of a session style approach. And I sort of always go around anti-clockwise around the lake, I don't know why, just the pattern, but yeah, this little corner gets a lot of the sun tracking throughout the day, but the ripples just gently running up against the reeds here, and this right in the edge, and I can see already there's some coloured water, and oh, there's another, oh, look at that one. God, that's a real thick fish coming in from right to left there. Yeah, oh, there's one behind it as well. Oh, it's exciting. Yeah, that's a far bigger fish, the first one, than the second one, so I've got to work out how I can try and get a rig in without spooking them. Bit overgrown, but that's the joy of stalking with a single rod. I can suddenly sort of squeeze it through the reeds and hopefully do all that without getting noticed. Right, let's get a rod out. Well, I'm trying to hide in the bushes because this is the second spot I baited up, and there is a fish on it now with its tail just waving at me. Oh, there you go. I don't know if you could pick that up. That's a real big one just coming in, just there. He's just sort of shot out to the right. Yeah, they really know you're there, you know, despite being as inconspicuous as you can. I haven't moved an inch. I'm sort of tucked into the foliage. My arms are tucked behind me, which I always find, maybe it's just an old habit, whether it makes any difference or not, but yeah, I'm really still, and they've come in, had a feed, and then the second time they've come in, they've flinched, so they definitely know. Probably doesn't help that we've got a cameraman behind me as well, but I reckon there's a great chance of getting a bite here, so I'm going to try and squeeze out. Well, there's a couple of fish really in close, just patrolling this marginal shelf here. I guess the joy of stalking also is you can travel so much lighter than you used to be able to. I think over the years, tackle has advanced somewhat. Everything's more compact, isn't it? You know, it's got a couple of rods in there, rucksack and hooking mat, and in fact I could probably do away with the rucksack and just have a little tackle pouch just in this bag, but in here I've got 2 rods, 2 compact nets just in case the rods are paced a little bit away on the marginal shelf there, and what I do for the middle compartment, because it does take 3 rods, I usually have my buzzers in there as well. Usually, well, all the time I'm stalking on my own, so I've got a little tripod for my camera. I also keep a tackle pouch in there at times, so I use this sort of central compartment almost as like an additional carry-all. The only reason I've got the old rucksack today, to be honest, I've got a nice packed lunch in there. There's a bit of an opportunity here to get 2 rods in because the bank sort of moves away a little bit to the right, so I think inconspicuously I'll be able to get 2 rods in and they're not going to know. Well, I'm only going to get one chance at this. So the last thing I want to do is be leading around and chucking leads around on some spots, so I've just seen a fish ghost through the spot, which is not ideal. I've got to try and wait for that fish to sort of glide out. It's gone round the back of this weed bed. Right, oh no, he's come back. He's come back, he's come back, he's right there. Right, let's go for it, let's go for it. Quick, quick, quick. That looks like the one. Right. Just going to try and get the line laid down between 2 weed beds. That's really important. Right. There we go. More often than not, when it comes to stalking, I'll happily fish just with 1 rod, because you're just looking for that real opportunist capture. Now often I'm looking in the marginal shelf, seeing which way the fish are coming in. Are they circling round a weed bed, chewing on the bait and coming back and gliding on the spot? And in those situations, having another line stretching across the spot could mean the difference between getting a quick bite or not. So just 1 rod a couple of feet from the bank is often my sort of chosen approach. But because I'm fishing so close in, if there's another little spot primed down the bank, 5-10 yards, where you're literally lowering it off the edge, not having a line stretching across the swim, feels like sometimes you can get away with just another rod, but I'd never be fishing more than 2. And of course you don't want them spaced out miles away, because you have to be in control of the rods. More often than not, I'm really happy just fishing with 1 rod, just lowering it right underneath my feet. I'm gonna get 1 chance to do this, the same as last time, so. That's it, lovely. I'm not convinced that fish spooked either, which is great. Oh. I got a little handful of tiny crumbed up boilie, but it's just not quite big enough to get out to the spot. So I've sort of crumbed it up, and then because it then sort of gets a little bit paste-like, I can sort of put it into a little ball like that. And it's almost like a little ground bait ball, and I'm just going to try and plop that out just on the rig, and as soon as it hits the water it disperses anyway. So for one reason or another, might have fluffed it, they might have sussed me, they've sort of melted out further into the lake, so I could either sit here, but I haven't got time, and I'm sure if I left that rod out all day they might come back, or in true sort of stalking fashion is what I want to do for the next couple of hours, is try and get around and fish as many areas as I can. So I'm just going to whip this bank stick in and try a different spot. That's it. Well, just lifting that rod up and changing it literally to this spot here. That rod's been out 5 minutes, and that is the beauty of stalking. I just seen a couple drifting across this bar, and yeah, you're fishing with your eyes all the time, and time is the essence, so can't sit back and wait for them to come to me. I sort of went to them. As you can tell, it went off really quick. I was just about to wrap it up, and you know what, it takes seconds to just went off a peck then. It takes seconds just to wrap the rods in the sling and try a different swim, but yeah, this one isn't small. How's that gone in there? That's a real nice fish, that. There he is. result, what a result. Wow, look at that one. My heart has been in my mouth for the last hour, perched up trees, hiding behind bushes, looking at carp ghost in right under my feet. We were gonna sort of reel in and go and look at a different spot. I just repositioned this rod just a little bit further out, and literally 5 minutes, all hell's broke loose. I think he's probably close to 30 pound. I'm not gonna weigh him. It's a really hot day today, so yeah, I'm just gonna get him back. Well, anyone that's followed my fishing over the years will probably have a good handle on the sort of approach that I like to fish 95% of the time. And today is no different. You know, when I'm stalking, it's exactly the same rig. I don't change anything. It's that classic little slip D that I use with a lead clip, with the tungsten tubing behind it, making sure everything's pinned down. That's the key, I think, you know, especially even more so when you've got fish sort of visiting the marginal shelf, because naturally as carp come up the shelf, I've found over the years the caution increases. You have to really get their confidence to get them up into the shallow water. It's almost like not fishing out in the pond where they feel a little bit safer, there's a bit of a depth of water. You know, when you're catching them in close, their eyesight's better, they're on edge, they kind of almost have masters of their environment, so I think everything needs to be pinned down. And the approach that I use with all the components are all very heavy, so it ticks the box perfectly. So I don't change the rig at all. The only thing that I do, because of the small sort of items and little bits of bait that I'm putting in, often I'm crushing the boilies up, often I'm crumbing up the bait and putting it into tiny little balls with hemp and, as I say, pellets. So I just reduce the size of the hook bait to try and mimic or match the free baits as best I can. Usually you would have probably seen me fish a snowman rig on that particular setup, and I'm very much a boilie fisherman. But when I come into the edge, I'm often fishing bits, so I just reduce the size of the hook bait. But apart from that, nothing else changes. Well, the spot I'm about to lower into is literally half a rod length just into that margin there. Because you're lowering it in from the tip, you can lay the rig out perfectly. So the lead comes into play really quick, and as soon as the fish pick up the hook bait, they're going to feel the resistance of the lead, because I can lay it out absolutely perfectly on the spot. I always make sure that the lead is near side to the spot, so this side to the bank, so they're going to approach it instead of having line going through the spot. And hopefully if the bait is this side of the spot, they can feed with confidence just beyond the lead, and they'll come onto the hook bait and feel the lead really quickly. That's the plan. Let's see if it works. Well, I only had an hour left of the session, and I just put that lovely fully scaled back, and I thought I'd just go and check the spot that I'd baited a couple of hours prior. I could just about see a heavily plated mirror just tilting up on the bait. It wasn't really a swim, so again, doesn't really get much attention when it comes to anglers turning up for the weekend or doing a few nights. It was more like a little bit of a poke hole through the reeds, but completely safe. You know, there wasn't any snags, and easily perfectly playable with a shorter rod. Jack went round the corner to get some B-roll and some other bits just to sort of bring this film together. But I set the bite cam up on the rod, and I sort of gently moved away from the rod and went and sat up sort of 10 yards up the bank, because you never want to sit on top of them. In typical fashion, the bite happened really quick, but we got the bite on camera. And as I sort of trapezed myself out onto a bit of a board to play it, the fish sort of didn't really know what was happening. It went off on a couple of strong runs, and then it was sort of wallowing ready for the net, and I had it all in the net within minutes. And actually it was one of, if not the best looking fish in the lake. And to catch it on, you know, a 2-hour session, a little tiny window, and I'd only put the bait in literally 2 hours before, it doesn't get any better than that. Well, that, crikey, that's about as good as it gets. Dropping the rod literally a couple of yards out. I've only had a few hours, and I catch this one on limited time out of an unfancied area that doesn't get fished a lot. Yeah, that epitomises everything you want stalking to be. Oh, look at that. That's about as good as it gets for a carp. And that sort of epitomised everything I love about stalking. And sometimes things can happen completely out the blue, And if I hadn't made a decision to come for just 2 hours fishing, when at times it's easy to not go, at times I can think 2 hours isn't enough, am I never going to make it happen in 2 hours? But you just never know, do you? And just having that bait in the right place for literally 10 minutes, that's all it was. Now I'm holding one of the best fish in the lake.